Weeks of street protests and outside pressure have driven Iran on edge. On Sunday, the Iranian president sought to reassure the public that his government is keen on easing the nation's economic problems. He urged people to refrain from any what he called destructive actions. Meanwhile, deadly clashes on the streets have been reported in recent days. The Iranian president suggested the death toll was significant, according to him, without citing the exact number. Protests in several Iranian cities began in late December, apparently over the sharp fall of Iran's currency amid persistent economic challenges as well. So how to assess the latest situation, even though information on the ground is rather limited to the outside world? What might be the impact of the Iranian situation on the region, the oil prices, and the geopolitical fragmentations we're witnessing today? For insights, let's talk to our panelists. Joining us in Shanghai, Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies with Fudan University. In Singapore, James Dorsey, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the Singapore's Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Last but not least, in Cairo, Maged Balchus, Professor in Political Science Department at the Helwan University. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, a lot of developments to catch up. There has been a blackout and disconnection of internet services in Iran. There's going to be memorial services for the martyrs in the country who lost their lives over the past few days. Professor Balchus, your assessment of the latest situation?
Well, if you look at the historical background, we had 5 popular uprisings. The first one, 1999, the second, 2009, 2019. So the interval between each was 10 years. Then the interval reduced to 3 years in between 2019, 2022, and 2025. That shows that there is a decline in the intervals, mean that the resentment of the Iranian people have changed. Also, the reason for the uprisings in the first 3 was human rights and election fraud. But the last 3 uprisings, which is the last one in 2025, was economic and social. So the idea of the progress and evolution of the uprisings, it's irreversible pattern of uprisings.
Now, Chu, this is the 4th day of the national blackout of the internet. We do not have that much information. Some of the information coming out in the media, one has to scrutinize before making it as evidence for one argument or another. So, Chu, tell us more about your assessment of the general situation without going into details.
Iran is currently suffering a lot and is facing a severe political crisis. I think it's in a very difficult situation at the moment because, first of all, if you look at the economy, it's in a recession, and the problems of unemployment and inflation, etc., are very unlikely to be resolved in the short term, and that can, intensify the social tension. And secondly, the Iranian government is caught in a dilemma because, on the one hand, inaction could escalate the protests, while action could provoke threats from Israel and the United States, because both the Trump and Netanyahu have threatened that they might launch attacks against the Iranian government. So right now it faces both internal and external threats, which make this wave of protest unprecedented.
Mr. Dorsey, your assessment, general situation too.
It's too early to draw conclusions. There's no doubt that this is a serious crisis. Whether this is the most serious crisis, I think we will see in the next few days. what is clear is that the government has already changed tack in many ways by essentially admitting that the economic demands of the protesters are legitimate. It's tried to draw a distinction between what it calls protesters or legitimate protesters and rioters. We've also seen an escalation of violence. What will happen, what change will entail? Presumably, change will come from within the regime. It could very well involve the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. But even if they do take over, and we're already in a situation in which, in many ways, the supreme leader has been marginalized in decision making.
Let's go into another direction, which is what kind of impact will the so-called outside pressure have on the internal debate, discussion, action and counteraction among different factions in Iran, especially with the threat coming from Israel and the US? True.
If we look at Trump's statement, you will find that so he has always taken these hardline positions, but actually I think Trump's statement was primarily aimed at deterring the Iranian government and inciting Iranian protesters to escalate their actions. And I don't, so there is the possibility that he is going to launch the attack, but I think that kind of possibility remains limited because Trump's current strategy, according to his strategy, his focus is still on the Western hemisphere. So he will focus more on countries like Mexico and Cuba. And also the United States national security strategy has lowered the priority of Middle Eastern affairs. So right now, I think Trump's discourse will but it still is going to worsen the situation in Iran because it encourages protesters. It kinds of like further escalating the tensions and making them even more difficult to resolve. So for instance, currently the Iranian president has already proposed policies to alleviate the economic crisis. Still, when you have in the United States and Israel encouraging the protesters at the moment, it can further escalate the social tensions in Iran.
All right. Professor Boutros, your thoughts?
I don't think he's going to change the whole regime. He is pressuring it to change from within. So he is trying to pressure Iran so that he's threatening of attacks, and he's going to attack, but not the attacks that would topple down the regime, just to have a deal with the Iranians over the nuclear program, over he does not really take care of the human rights. He takes care of the natural resources and nuclear program of Iran and animosity against Israel.
But Mr. Dorsey, both Israel and the United States have not necessarily enjoyed good reputation among Iranians to begin with. Now, no matter what Washington wants to do or the strategies behind it, how much impact will that really have on the different factions that are likely to have a say in the overall governance?
Well, first of all, I think that one has to be careful in what the attitudes are. Go back to 2001, the 9/11 attacks. Tehran was the only Middle Eastern capital outside of Israel where you had large demonstrations in favor of the United States. Now, having said that, I think that we've got to keep in mind that Trump has multiple options. Large-scale military attacks against military facilities in Iran is only one option. Another option is targeting military and security officials. A third option is cybersecurity measures. There's also the possibility of even harsher sanctions. So we don't really know which way a U.S. intervention would go. I think what is clear is that a U.S. military intervention on a large scale would could create a power vacuum in which you see the descent in Iran into a situation as you had in Syria. Keep in mind that almost half of the population of Iran are ethnic or religious minorities.
Iranian president spoke to Iranian media and blamed recently the United States and Israel for the unrest in his country. Your take, sir, Mr. Dorsey.
The regime has, in the last several days, tried to increasingly frame this as incited by foreign powers. There's some indication that foreign powers may have been involved in it. What's beyond doubt, this is a genuine protest. People feel it in their pockets. Their savings have been wiped out. Inflation is rampant. Corruption is rampant. And that is what is first and foremost driving these protests, even if there may or may not be foreign support.
Professor Botros, we've seen decades of sanctions by both the United States and quite a number of other countries against Iran over time. How much impact is that having on the Iranian economy vis-a-vis what we are seeing today with the current status of the Iranian economy?
The accumulation of the economic sanctions plus the irrational conduct of the Iranian regime to channel the resources of the country to its proxies abroad, that made the economy of Iran suffer for years. That accumulation raised questions for the people, not only because of the devaluation of the currency, but the unfairness, the poverty of a large margin of the population made the revolutions escalate.
Mr. Dorsey, do you see that what is going on in Iran as part of the overall trends that we see in many other countries, or this is something very unique only to Iran?
Well, on the one hand, we're seeing a trend of protests across the globe, without question. In Iran, it's particularly acute because the economic situation is particularly acute. This protest movement does not have a cohesive leadership. It does not have a cohesive, agreed upon definition of what they want to see. They know what they don't want to see. For example, the emergence of images and slogans in favor of the of the son of the former Shah of Iran. He's a brand name, one of the very few brand names. He does not have an infrastructure in Iran itself. His support base is primarily in the Iranian diaspora. He does not have a vision. He has not articulated a vision for an Iran post this regime. So I think we've got to be very careful in terms of where this will lead and what will emerge from it.
Meanwhile, we are also seeing events going on in the United States, for example. Since the latest news about Venezuela, we see more than 100 cities inside the country have seen different sizes of demonstrations against what the current administration has been trying to do. Other than that, we also see some demonstrations going on in some American cities regarding the Iranian issue and the U.S. way of interfere or not with what's going on in Iran. For example, lately a truck plowed through a crowd of Iranian diaspora protesters in Los Angeles, forcing demonstrators to scatter before they chased down the vehicle. How much, Ms. Zhang, do you see reactions like this in the United States, elsewhere in the world, have demonstrated the complexity of the Iranian issue and its impact also for the rest of the world?
Right. So actually, like you said, the geopolitics in the Middle East in general is very complicated, especially when it comes to the Iranian issue. At the moment, regarding the United States, one important background is that the United States, like many European countries, have faced very deep and profound political polarization at the moment. So you have the immigrants on the one hand, and you have Trump or a lot of like populist politicians and scholars on the other hand. So at the moment, I think Trump's his policy is that he does not care that much about the immigrants, and he's trying to make the geopolitics within the United States even more polarized by threatening Iran further, and also by taking his pro-Israel positions in the Gaza war. So that is his strategy at the moment. So I think what you have mentioned, for instance, the protests, the demonstrations at the moment in the United States will not affect Trump government's decision making. But what is going to affect his decision might be his concerns with the oil price that is going to cause. And that is why he's still hesitating about his actions towards Iran.
As we are not just looking at the map of the United States, but also the region particularly, both Israel, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, there are a lot of stakeholders in the region beyond just where the United States is far away.
Basically, I think that the Middle East, with the exception of Israel, is very concerned about what a U.S. intervention would lead to. They don't want to see it. The Emiratis may be privately an exception to that, but by and large, the Middle East, I think most Middle Eastern states are very concerned about the possibility of Iran breaking up, descending into ethnic and religious violence, which they would see as a destabilizing factor, even if the regime in Tehran may not be their preferred regime.
Professor Balchus, your thoughts?
From a broader picture, I can see a mega vision of Trump of geostrategic changes in the globe. The crackdown on Iran is part of the crackdown on the global south and BRICS. So he likes to, or he aspires to reduce the impact of the global south and demoralize the leaders of the global south, Iran, Venezuela, the Arabs. So he's targeting the resources. He's targeting. He wants a deal. If you read his book, The Art of the Deal.
Another thing related to the Iranian issue, many are watching very closely at the oil prices, and particularly the Strait of Hormuz. Any military intervention is likely to have an impact on that very specific choke point, and therefore the oil market worldwide. Not to mention, there was already an earlier case about Venezuela. So, Mr. Dorsey, for a world that is thirsty for energy, how is the latest event likely to be viewed by different parties? Your thoughts?
Well, I think first of all, most of the Middle Eastern states are concerned. They're very concerned. If the United States indeed gains full control of Venezuelan oil, the United States becomes the major party in the international oil market. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves. What does that mean? That is almost as much as the United States and Saudi Arabia combined. If Iran comes back onto the market with a regime that were more favorable to the United States, that would only strengthen the U.S. position in the global air market. And that is a paradigm game-changing shift.
All right. And Ms. Zhang, tell us more about your thoughts.
Right now, we should note that the international oil price is actually depending on the supply and demand. And the United States, actually, as I mentioned, Trump is very concerned about the oil price. So what he might do is that right now, as he controls many of the oil fields in Venezuela, so with this kind of like more supply from Venezuela, he might try to alleviate the possible oil price that can be caused by the Hormuz problem. But again, I think it all depends on where the protests will lead to, because at the moment, so far, the United States and Israel have not attacked, Iran, and Iran is also trying to avoid this kind of scenario.
Right. Talking about oil, there's another line we need to look at very closely. That is the business community regarding the oil, even though they have a limited say when it comes to geopolitics, but they do play a role in the decision-making process, apparently. Earlier, after the Venezuela event, we have seen the Trump administration has assembled a team of biggest oil company executives to sit down together and say, here's the cake, let's cut the cake, but you guys need to put the money in it for infrastructure and production. But very few would like to get on board. The Treasury Secretary, Besant, who came out over the weekend and suggested this is likely to see small and medium-sized oil companies playing a bigger role in Venezuela in developing the oil resources there. So, Mr. Dorsey, given it is already a very chaotic picture for the oil business as a result of the Venezuela event, how will different scenarios likely to impact the oil market and the overall world's access to energy?
Well, there's a lot of contradiction in the position of Trump on oil. Yes, he wants a price of around $50, and the oil price prior to the escalation of the demonstrations in Iran had already dropped to below $60 a barrel. Now, for the Gulf states, that's a very low price. Their budgets are calculated on a much higher price. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is that Venezuela is a middle term factor in this. First of all, the major oil companies are reliant to go in without a clear, stable political and legal environment. The estimates of what would have to be invested in Venezuela range from $35 to $100 billion. Those are not figures that small and medium enterprises can tolerate. On top of that, a lower oil price, a $50 oil price, is a threat to the U.S. shale industry, which needs a higher oil price to be able to operate. So, and the final remark I'll put on this is that Venezuela is not a short-term player. It's going to take several years to bring that to significantly increase Venezuelan production. So there's a lot of contradictions and assumptions in Trump's oil policy that have yet to be ironed out.
Professor Botros, your thoughts?
Well, the trajectory that Trump chooses to follow is a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game, it's my gains are your loss. So he likes to reduce the price of oil. As Professor James said, that would be a problem to the Gulf states that would affect them largely in their budgets and their development plans. So what he's going to do, he likes to have supremacy over the resources, not only in the Gulf, but in Latin America, especially in Venezuela. They have more than 300 years of reserves.
Yeah. So, Ms. Zhang, how can we study the development and evolution of the Iranian story with the backdrop of the oil business globally and the latest events regarding Venezuela? This is a big question, but I do hope you can help us to find the direction, please.
Right. So, of course, Iran is highly affected by the international oil price market because at the moment, the biggest issue with Iran is that it's suffering from a huge economic crisis because last year they suffered from a worst drought, and also at the moment, like they are facing the inflation and also high rate of unemployment. So at the moment, the question here is that Iran's economy is highly dependent on oil revenues, right? But the global energy transition and sanctions all make this model very unsustainable. And also, although Trump has threatened that it might attack Iran, what is more possible is that Trump might also impose even harsher economic sanctions against Iran, which could further escalate this kind of social tension within Iran.
For now, I want to thank all of you for helping us and bringing your insights in the story. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.